importance and advocacy associated with the World Elderly Abuse Awareness Day. There'll be different programs going on throughout the world, throughout our local region and state, and so we're just really thankful to have someone. If he works directly in the field, we're a senior center, but he works in the assisted living environment. Is that skilled nursing? Long-term. See, I know there's different names. I wanted to get the name right. And so he even more sees the need for training in this, awareness in this. I myself am guardian of my uncle, who is in a facility that has a memory care unit. And so you have to be aware and visit and make sure you're staying on top of things, because especially for those without voices who can't advocate for themselves, knowing the signs is very important. It's not always visible bruises, okay? I just wanted to point that out. It's often not visible signs. So let's give a big thank you to Mr. Jerry for coming today.
And pardon my bandages. I've got, well, I asked them to see if they could cut some of the ugly off of me. They got started. They said they just sewed it up. Said it's a hopeless cause. No, I do have a little touch of skin cancer. They got it all. But like Amanda said, refer to this week being Elderly Abuse Awareness Week, and she's invited me to speak, and it will be brief. I've got a short video, and with time permitting, we can watch the video and just give us an introduction to talk about the different areas of abuse. And when you consider abuse, you may just be thinking about physical abuse, but there's so many other avenues that go out from the word abuse, elder abuse. There is physical abuse, where you are physical, hitting, pushing, kicking, inappropriate use of drugs and restraints. Physical abuse, that's pretty well defined. Then there's psychological or emotional abuse. How many of you have ever witnessed emotional abuse? I have seen it in operation with family members, with friends, with people that I don't even know. I've heard conversations just pushing my cart through the grocery store. Haven't you? And you've heard some terrible conversations that exhibit that kind of behavior, that emotional and psychological abuse, that being insults and threats and humiliation and controlling behavior, confinement and isolation. Those are just a few points that we want to consider when we're talking about emotional abuse. Then there is sexual abuse. That is sexual assault or contact without consent. How many of you know what consensual relationship is? That is real. How about non-consensual? That is, you don't know means no. There's no gray area. It's yes or no, and there's no in between. There is no gray area when it comes to sexual abuse. And there are other ways that we can exhibit that kind of behavior. It could be just in conversation. Have you ever heard someone start to tell a dirty joke and very offensive in nature? So there are other avenues of sexual abuse. Financial exploitation, misusing or stealing a person's money or assets. How about neglect or abandonment? I'm good friends with Karen Steen, who handles the Adult Protective Services. And we get referrals from time to time from family members that have seen abuse in the home, where the person a loved one may have been neglected or maybe not given the medications that they need to improve their health, and or keeping them from those care needs. So those are 5 avenues of elder abuse. And do you realize that people that really, yes
Okay,
ma'am?
in a situation like that, about what you were just saying, about the abuse for an elderly, if a person know in the family that they abuse someone who's probably might be scared or something to tell
Yes,
the
there are.
situation,
I understand.
yeah, because I've got a friend that their one was very abusive, and they was going through a whole lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And they was scared to reach out to somebody. And like I told them that this help that you can reach out or a number of someone you might can call and talk to somebody.
That is a very good question because we are.
What's going on and what's happening in a family.
That's right. We are reluctant when it comes to those that we may have blood relation or family members. And there is anonymous helplines, whatever you call. As a matter of fact, the majority of the reports that come into the Adult Protective Services could be anonymous. They just a tip line say, listen, would you investigate? And that's their role to follow up and make sure that that is valid or whether it is not valid. Yes, but that's a very good question. You know, we don't want to get involved. We want to mind our own business. And when we get into someone else's business, but when it comes to abuse, we're talking about for the safekeeping of people that we love or see that are being abused. It is our responsibility to step up, not wait until tomorrow, but do it immediately. Yes, to do it immediately. No, that's right. Don't wait. Because the longer you wait, the more abusive it could become, and it could be very damaging to those relationships.
Is Dr. Nicole today. I'm a medical doctor, a geriatrician, so I'm a specialist in the care of older adults, and I've been one for about 20 years. My purpose here on The Wrinkle is to share information to help you to age well, if you're an older person, or if you're caring for someone who's older. It's information that you can use to help that older person to continue to age well. Today's topic is difficult. It's about elder abuse. World Elder Abuse Awareness Day was June 15th, 2020, and it prompted me to think a little bit more about elder abuse. It can be tough to recognize, even as somebody who works with older adults all the time. So in this video, we'll define what elder abuse is and the different types of it. What are the risk factors for elder abuse? How you might be able to detect it, and then what to do about it. Elder abuse was actually defined by the World Health Organization in 2011. It's a single or repeated act or lack of appropriate action occurring with any relationship where there's an expectation of trust which causes harm or distress to an older person. So that sounds pretty straightforward, but it can be complicated and kind of nuanced, especially because a lot of times the person who is the abuser is a family member or a loved one of the person, the older person. So it can be complex. Elder abuse can be in many forms. It can be physical, emotional or psychological, financial, and it can also include neglect. So that would be not supplying some care that a person might need, or some supplies that they might need, like medical supplies, or medicine, or even food, water, shelter, supervision, things like that. Elder abuse can take place in a person's home, and it could also take place in the older person's home or the family member's home, or at an institution, like a long-term care home or a nursing home. We're hearing some information about neglect and abuse that might have been going on in long-term care, especially during COVID, and it's extremely frightening and disturbing. A 2015 study of the prevalence of elder abuse found that about 10% of people over the age of 65 in North and South America were victims of elder abuse. That number went up to about 47% if somebody was living with dementia. There are risk factors for elder abuse, so if a person is over 80, if they have cognitive impairment, if they have more disability, that can increase the risk that a person will have elder abuse inflicted on them. Other things that can put a person at risk include things like a socioeconomic factor. So if somebody has less financial resources, that can really put a person at higher risk of financial abuse for sure, especially if the abuser is dependent on the older adult for money or shelter. There are factors about the family that can increase the risk of abuse. So if there are sort of family stressors going on, like somebody being very ill, or sometimes we see families where both of the elders in a marriage are have a lot of disability, and maybe both of them are living with dementia. So that can increase the risk of abuse. And so can factors about the care partner. So if an older adult is relying on somebody who maybe has a history of mental illness themselves, now that's not to say that people with mental illness can't be good caregivers and are more likely to be abusive, but it's a risk factor because someone who isn't well themselves might not be able to meet a person's care needs, and they might be more likely to end up being in a situation where there's some abuse or exploitation or neglect. Substance abuse is another thing that can increase the risk of abuse. So that could be substance abuse on the part of the older adult or on the part of the care partner. And that might be a sign, sometimes when we see substance abuse, if we're, doctors or nurses, geriatricians included, if you see someone who is abusing a certain substance, it's probably good to think about, is there any kind of an abuse situation that is promoting the older person to drink or to use a substance as a way of escaping? It can be hard to detect the physical signs of elder abuse. And that can be because older adults can sometimes have those signs for other reasons, and we don't want to jump to conclusions. It can be hard to detect signs of elder abuse because some of the things that we would be looking for, like fractures or bruising or cuts or tears, we might call them lacerations in the skin, somebody not getting their medications properly or having weight loss or malnutrition. Some of those things can be caused by other medical conditions or things that are going on with the person. So they could be signs of abuse, but they could also be related to other health issues. And we don't want to jump to conclusions, but that's why it's really important. And it usually takes an interprofessional team to kind of diligently look for those other causes and make sure that that's not the cause of the injury. It's really usually that we notice a pattern. So if we're noticing repeated issues, without a very good explanation, that might make us think about elder abuse. Elder abuse is serious, so not only can it cause injuries that can be painful and can be debilitating, it can also increase the risk of death, and it actually does. So people who report abuse are more likely to die than people who don't, and that's especially true of older women. So if elder abuse is happening or neglect, it's important to know about it and to take steps to stop it. Just like with other kinds of abuse, it can be underreported. And that could be especially true when it comes to elder abuse, because there could be factors that are making the person at higher risk for abuse that are getting in the way of the person's ability to report that abuse. So, for example, if someone's living with dementia, it might be harder for the person to know the steps to take or to have clarity about what exactly is happening. And even if short-term memory is affected, a person might not remember who did the abuse or even that it happened, and might come up with another more benign explanation for the injury that was experienced. So it's really difficult. I know that some people have become very fearful, especially when it comes to abuse that might happen by a caregiver in the home, for example, like a paid caregiver, or in long-term care or something like that. So a lot of people are using video cameras and other ways of checking in to make sure that the care that the older person is receiving isn't abusive and is appropriate. I can't necessarily argue with that. I think ideally that would be done with everybody's consent and knowledge. But if there are significant concerns about safety, I think it can be okay to do that kind of monitoring. It's really important to ensure the privacy of the older adult as well, though. So if an older adult is receiving intimate care, for example, that's not necessarily something that you want to monitor in a video type of way. So I think a best effort should be made to get consent. But it's really important to take some of those safeguards to protect them. If you feel like you're being abused, you can always call the police. Elder abuse is almost always a crime, but it does depend a little bit on the jurisdiction that you live in. Some older adults are afraid to call the police because they're worried that if they're being abused by a family member, that family member might end up in jail. And it's very complicated. Even though abuse is taking place, it still might be the case that you don't want your son or your grandson or daughter to actually go to prison or have charges. And so oftentimes when somebody calls the police because they're worried about abuse, an elder abuse team might come on the scene. And so that's not necessarily the police, like in the TV show Cops, but usually there's a health professional as well. So I know locally my elder abuse team has a nurse and a police officer. And they usually work together to try to get the older person to safety, but also to resolve the situation so that it's not likely to happen again. So it doesn't always result in charges. But abuse isn't right. And so if seeking help means that there's negative consequences for the abuser, that can sometimes be the right thing, even though it's difficult. Thanks so much for watching. I think this is an important topic. I'll leave some links down below if you want to learn more. And if you want to know more about aging, you could watch the video that YouTube is suggesting for you right now, or go to our website at www.thewrinkle.ca.
Talk primarily toward the extremes end of the spectrum, but you know there are less extreme. Do you realize that there can be elder upon elder abuse, where we abuse one another? I mean, just in conversation here with you and I today, we could get engaged in some conversation that would make someone feel very uncomfortable. Or we could engage in some kind of behaviors that may be considered risque and put one another at a very uncomfortable position. So it is something that we can meet a total stranger on the street and we can experience any types of verbal abuse. You may be may have a hot temper, but when you get in an altercation with maybe a total stranger, or you know, I scream when I get behind a slow driver and I'm wanting to speed and he's going the speed limit and I'm wanting to get where I need to be, I get frustrated and angry and I'll say, you know, slide over, get out of my way, and then we carry this attitude or that frame of mind or that hostility into the grocery store, and then someone's in line at the grocery store and she wants to price check everything, and then she doesn't have quite enough money. She needs to put something back, and you're behind, and then nothing has a barcode on it, so they got to have a price check right in the line that you thought was going to be the shortest ends up being the most time-consuming line. But I mean, there are things that just frustrate and aggravate us that could, and we need to be considerate and remember. I mean, this is a faith-based organization, Pruitt Health, and we acknowledge the Word of God, and we try to exemplify Christ-like behavior everywhere that we go. What does the Scripture tell us to do when someone offends us? It says, do not seek restitution, do not seek retaliation, don't strike back. If someone steals a coat from you, give them your shoes too. That's very hard to do. It's really hard for us to comprehend how we can love someone that despitefully abuses us and uses us. But we're called on as followers of Christ to do that. But thank you so much, Amanda. You have any questions? We do have, being in long-term care, we may get a phone call or maybe an investigation, and we're proud to say that our books, our accreditation is open to the public, and we have no substantiated or abusive allegations against us, so we're proud of that. As a matter of fact, if we were not, then of course we would be shut down. And we only hire the best employees. So if you need help or need someone that needs long-term care assistance or short-term rehab, please keep us in mind. We'd love to help you. Any questions? If not, I'll turn it back over to Amanda. I think you maybe have a part two.
Just sharing, we do have an elderly abuse policy here for our center. It's also part of, sorry, I thought Mr. John was going down. You scared me, John. Be careful, John. I'll stay upright, please, buddy. Thank you. But it is also, having that policy, we don't just have it because it checks the box on us being a state accredited facility, but you should have that. Just like where I worked before, the mental health field, we had listed the patient's rights because they came there. They were our consumers, but they were also considered patients and had the patient's bill of rights. And so everyone has those rights. Everyone has the right not to be abused, whether it's the staff not to be abused by the patient or the patient being abused both ways. Also, just as he stated, I'm going to reiterate that you can always make an anonymous report. And you cannot get in trouble. Even if you just assuming that something's going on because something just don't seem right, you cannot get in trouble if it turns out that it's not verified, okay? You can't get in trouble for making that. If somebody might threaten you, oh, I know you called, you follow through, okay? You make the report. There's no retaliation on the side of the police or the health department, or the DHHS, okay? So always, err on the side of caution. If you believe something's going on, say something.
Better to be safe
Then sorry, that's right. Yes, ma'am.
Your mouth can be abusive.
Right. And that's why he
Things
brought
that
up,
they say to you, that's abusive.
yes. And that's why it's really difficult, because I'm in the position to where I have to implement rules and policies. I have to. But what he mentioned really brought to mind elderly abuse, the way, say someone may talk to you, a peer may talk to you, and you'd be okay and accepting of it, but that doesn't mean someone else in the room is not made to feel uncomfortable by it, or threatened by it, or affected by it. And so just because you are okay with their personality does not mean it's acceptable in this type of environment. That's that social awareness that we speak of, so that, because again, like you said, you could take an attitude, come in here, y'all know that person, or the where you're at that day, but it comes out on somebody else, or maybe somebody else feels scared, or that they have to leave. Then we have to make sure that we're aware of things like that as well. I know that I'm guilty of sometimes, but I tell y'all when I'm in a bad place, hey, I'm not okay today, just so you know. But we always have room to grow, all of us. I mean, just like if you're a parent, sometimes you take a tone with your kid. Now, does that mean you're abusing? No, that just means you're aggravated. But I personally have a heart that is very soft to those with cognitive impairments, or that live with cognitive disabilities, such as my own uncle, because so often they'll just take whatever their caregiver gives them, and they don't talk about it because they don't process things the same way someone without those limitations would. And that's a big place of passion for me, is to make sure that those without a voice and those that can't speak up the same way someone without limitations could, we got to make sure that we stand up for them. my uncle would just laugh and smile everything off. That's where he is in his mind, and I'm grateful he's in that type of place. But I'm also very concerned, you know, that even if something is happening to him, that because his mind is stuck in a good, happy place, he's going to smile and kind of laugh about everything, and us miss signs. You know, those are just things we have to make sure we're aware. If there's drops, changes in weight, you know, just different things that maybe aren't as simple as just again, like I said, those physical abuse signs. Thank you all again. Any that program we do here, I always say it may not be for you today, but it may be education that you can take and share with someone at another time or tomorrow. Thank you guys. We hope to see you at the walk on Monday morning. Let me get it right. Thank you, Mr. Jerry. We appreciate it. Make sure if you want to, there's a few to-go plates left. You know, take you some. Connie, I know you want some cheese to take home. Okay. Thank you, guys. Because of working in the field with the Asian community, I always look for avenues to make sure that we advocate and bring awareness to those situations that our Asian community may face.
Just based on demographics alone, the United States is about to enter a phase where more people are about to join the elderly community than ever before. So how important are lessons like this and to get this message out to the community?
Yes, as the educational piece is very important, to give some guidance and some direction to people that are seeking some direction, and to be open to questions and just be transparent with the industry and the challenges that we have with the elderly, and just educate, let them know that there's a safe place for us all.
What do you think?
It becomes more valuable daily as the age from 0 to 17 decreases, and our aging community is going to increase dramatically. You'll see that the Council on Aging, Department of Aging Services, they are all ramping up their efforts for advocacy, from elderly abuse to scams and frauds. We've got to make sure that folks know that the information is there and that it reaches not only our community, but council members, our state representatives, our senators, and on up, so that they understand the need for funding to make sure that these advocacy and educational opportunities are there for the community, for the caregivers, before they reach that part of the aging community, so they know before they even get there how to handle it, where the safe spaces and places are. It's very important.
And one more question, which is, elderly abuse, it is a silent killer. Women might be too afraid to come forward, or men might feel emasculated because, they have been abused, and as a man, that can be difficult to deal with, more difficult to admit. How important is it for people to be able to come forward, even if it's a verbal abuse, or if it's a financial abuse, something that's indirectly abusing them? How important is that for people to step up and kind of break out of that shell that's keeping them from saying something?
Well, the raw truth is it could save someone's life. There's nothing more important than rescuing those that are in jeopardy or those that are in harm's way, and we can prevent that by educating and the awareness of the risk and the resolution, and that's very important from our perspective. Yeah.
It is imperative. It takes a lot of strength and courage for someone that is in an abusive situation to speak up. Often you don't know the psychological damage that has been done in that course, and as a survivor of a domestic abuse, violent situation at a very young age, it took going into hiding to escape, but it was the best decision I made, and I know that decision saved my life. Family tried to reach out, but it was finally up to me to step up and make that bold step to speak up and say, this is not okay, and you will stop it.
Absolutely. And if someone's experiencing this, where are some places they can go? Who are some people that you think? that they can call?
Your local Department of Health and Human Services, they have an Adult Protective Services unit. Miss Karen Steen is the director there. Reach out there. Also, we have multiple resources here. You can come here and tell us. Aging services. What are some of the other resources?
Those are my primary, my go-to is Karen Steen, wonderful network. She has a great team there
Yes.
to follow for
And
adult
I
protective
do know that
services.
is it
Medicare.
611
611.
that provides crisis services? So say you're in a situation you won't have anywhere to go if you leave or you're scared, they can help find you placement, usually outside of the town you're currently located in, till you can in shelters such as like the Haven in Sanford. There for domestic violence and sexual abuse, not just of women but also men and families. And I've even seen them take in elderly because that is still an abusive situation, and help them get on their feet and reach out to proper authorities, get advocates behind them that will go to court with them, that will follow through. So that first step is reporting, reaching out, calling.
All right. No, that's all I got. Man, I appreciate you guys' time. Thank you.
Thank you.